This was about 23 years ago, and I had no clue about Dogman, and I did not believe in anything supernatural back then. I was hunting wild hog in one of the southernmost areas of the Great Dismal Swamp. This is far south of the wildlife refuge where it ends at the Albemarle Sound in eastern North Carolina. I put my boat in the water at a friend's house about a half an hour by water from where I went into the swamp. This was late November, so it was pretty cold and very overcast, and it got dark at around 5 or so. It was about noon when I tied up and got out of the boat. The first hour or so was pretty uneventful. I was working my way inland. Some of this part of the swamp can be walked through when the tide is low, and it's just marshy with deeper canals and bogs scattered about, but there aren't any trails or marked paths or anything, so you really have to pay attention where you're going and definitely need a compass since you cannot see the sun. It's pretty dark there, even on a bright, sunny day. I was back in there for maybe a couple of hours and looking for signs of hog. I could tell some had been back there at some point, but it had been a while. I got a little further in and started smelling what I thought was boar. It's rutting season and the male wild hog have a very distinct odor. It's a musky kind of fermented smell mixed with old poop and urine. Kind of hard to explain if you've never smelled it before. However, this was different. It was musky, but more like an outside dog soaked in water. I stopped to look and listen, and after 10 or so minutes started hearing snuffling, breathing that came and went. After a bit, I started to hear some growling. I started to get a little freaked out because it didn't sound like a hog, and it sounded big. I stopped again and knelt down and waited and looked. Where I was at the brush was really thick, so I really couldn't see more than 20 feet or so in front of me or in any direction at that. That's when I started to see a little movement. It definitely was not moving like a hog. It was kind of low walking, crouched down, but not on all fours, and I was only getting glimpses of it. And it would stop. It was maybe 40 feet away. This is when I actually started to get scared. I was born in northeastern Kentucky and spent most of my free time as a kid in the woods, camping, riding dirt bikes, and have always been comfortable, even in the deep woods, so when I moved to North Carolina, I fell in love with the swamp. This is the first time I think I had ever felt real, actual fear. I had a Mossberg 590 shotgun full of 3-inch double-aught buck, but no extra shells and no pistol. The 590 also has a bayonet lug, so I took out the bayonet and put it on. I started backing up, not taking my eyes off where I had last seen whatever this was. A few minutes later, I hear it again, a little further away over to my left. I'm probably about 3/4 of a mile into the swamp, which doesn't seem very far, but the terrain does not make for very quick movement. This goes on for about another 20 minutes while backtracking out as fast as I can, and I'm still hearing it and catching glimpses of movement, and the smell is getting stronger. After a bit, I realize that this thing has gotten between me and the way I came from my boat, and now I'm starting to panic. I try to start getting further away from it, heading in the right direction, and then I see it again, and it's standing up, and it's pretty damn tall. It was still back in the brush, so I couldn't really make out the details, as it was dark as hell back there. I wanted to cry and run, but I knew that was bad. It didn't seem like it wanted to get into the water, so I started wading through the canal heading back toward my boat. I started to put some distance between it and myself, so I get back onto hard ground and move a little faster, but I can still hear it snuffling, and growling and moving through the brush, but it's not close anymore. I made it back to my boat, and I'm soaking wet, freezing, but thank God I made it out of there. And just in time, it was getting foggy and starting to drizzle. I had never been that scared in my life. I made it back to my buddy's house and told him what happened, and I could tell he knows something when I tell him where I went. He brings me in and gives me some hot coffee with a big slug of bourbon in it. When I calm down, he takes me to the other house out back of his property where his granddad lives. I had met his granddad before, but he had always kind of been standoffish with me. I found out later he just had really bad PTSD from Korea, and my buddy and his family lived there since the Civil War. I think his granddad's great-granddad had been a slave around there, but that's a different story for another day. I guess what I mean to say is his family had history in this area and knew the place a lot better than me. After I told his granddad what happened, he stood up and looked me in the eye and said, "Do not go back there. You're lucky you made it out. That's where the big dogs live." I left and went home and slept 18 hours at least. I tried to forget about the experience and started to believe I was just seeing crap and freaked myself out. I eventually forgot about it until a few years ago when a Dogman encounter video popped up on my YouTube feed. I was curious about what the hell a Dogman was, so I started listening to it, and that whole experience came flooding back to my mind. It was very similar to what happened to me. I started looking into it, and there have been other sightings and encounters in eastern North Carolina. That's my experience. I'm 44 now and still live in coastal North Carolina, but have not been back there to that area since. I still love to hunt, and I love the outdoors and the swamp, but I don't go that far out anymore. Now, like I said prior to sharing that experience, I've had numerous experiences shared with me from the Great Dismal Swamp area. And, when I had my encounter in '94, there was no internet. So when I was researching different things, it was mostly like Bigfoot in the paranormal when I first started. But then when the internet pops up and starts to really get to what we have now, that's when a lot of my research progressed. I'm no expert, and I don't believe there are any experts in this field. All I have is my own experience and my own theories and experiences that have been shared with me, as well as other people's theories too. That's why I always find it interesting at like these conventions when, someone that has had an experience that I've been interviewed 1,000 times, 1,000 different places, and wrote one book, that they are experts because they had one experience. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. But got off track there. Sorry. The Great Dismal Swamp was notorious for, during the Civil War, a lot of runaway slaves would run into that area to escape their captors and hide. And there were old stories from, former slaves passed down to generations talking about these dogmen in these swamps. And the people that were pursuing the slaves wouldn't go in there because they knew what was in there. And that just shows you how crazy and how terrifying and terrible life would be, going back with them, or am I going in this swamp where there's a 7-foot dog creature? I'm going in the swamp. But there's been at least 200 years of experiences passed down from the Great Dismal Swamp. It's a notorious hot spot. And like I said, I've got an encounter downstairs waiting. I just got to talk to the person one more time. So on to today's second encounter. We were living in the northern part of Michigan back in the 80s. One evening, I saw a herd of deer running across the field into the woods. I heard a howl of a wolf. I wasn't too interested, but knew my dad liked being a wildlife spotter, so I went in and told him that I think the deer were spooked by a wolf pack. My dad got up and grabbed his binoculars off the table by the door and went out. I sat down and started watching my Friday night shows, thinking nothing of it. Then the door slammed and I heard my dad holler at my mom. I stood up. It stood up! Ran to their bedroom and came out loading the shotgun and stood by the door. My mom told me to go downstairs to the finished basement and finish watching TV down there. Dad spent the night in the chair in the living room. The gun was never put back in his gun cabinet. The next day, I asked what was wrong since he was still looking out the front window. He didn't say. Said he didn't want to scare me. Not that that helped, because at the age of 9, I was imagining all sorts of horrors. He passed away last year, and I was going through his things with my mom. And I saw this folder with the word werewolf on it. Inside, he had handwritten notes and a few pictures he had taken. The pictures didn't show anything of interest, but one showed a 6-foot hay roll, and his notes said that it stood taller than the roll. Other pictures showed chum dirt from the herd of deer that ran flat out. I'm not totally convinced that he saw something like a Dogman, but something scared him very badly. He never used to hunt with friends during deer season, but after that, it was always him and his buddies. Sorry if this isn't too exciting, and for the fact that it's secondhand. So, yeah, I've always said this to people when they're like, I've had my experience, but it's not exciting. Well, we're talking about something that we are told doesn't exist. And, you find a folder marked werewolf. Your dad doesn't tell you because he doesn't want to scare you. And there's handwritten notes and such. And obviously it changed him. So, I'd say he saw a werewolf. Funny thing, I was thinking about this, sharing this in a way of having it come up. But I was watching an interview, and it has nothing to do with my political affiliations. But I was watching a interview with Robert Kennedy Jr. And for those of you who've been with the channel, all of you know I'm a Tea Party Republican. But I have a lot of Democratic views as well. No, I wouldn't even say that. I'd say that I'm an American that just wants what our founding fathers wanted. The freedoms that we were promised. So, but RFK Jr., he fascinates me because he is classified as a conspiracist. But he was talking about how the media And I've always said this with the attacks and stuff, how the media always spins a narrative. And with all the attacks and all of the cover-ups, he was saying how just recently, back in 2016, before Trump was elected president, that Obama had passed the law to where the CIA could use the media to feed the American populace propaganda and lie to us. And I think that applies to everything. I watch BBC because I did watch BBC because I used to think that they're honest, because it's not part of our country or whatever. But this thing in 2016, the BBC is part of it. So it's a AP, BBC, it's all just a big conglomeration of media agencies lying and spreading the lies and covering Dogman accounts up, Bigfoot accounts up, UFO, UAP, this and that. And I've got a video that I'm going to work on. I wrote some notes about it that has a lot to do with that. I don't know why I brought it up with that, but our government is hiding way too much from us. And we need to stand up and do something about it. We really do. Because I do consider myself a amateur journalist or an independent journalist. And I really think that, any researcher that has a YouTube channel that is sharing information that is something other than a creepypasta or some fiction, is a journalist. But we are not in that control yet. Some may be. But I think that's why there are a lot of little idiosyncrasies that don't match up with things on YouTube, Google. Anyway, sorry, let's get into the next encounter. I was driving my husband's Ford F-150 to Kansas City late at night from Joplin, Missouri. There was hardly any other traffic on the road, and it was a crystal clear night out. Visibility was great. We were about 5 miles south of Butler. I looked the area up on a map after a week or two. It took me a while to actually wrap my head around what I had saw. I know what I saw, but mentally, I had a hard time acknowledging what I saw, but I know what I saw, and there is the distress of knowing it's out there. My husband slept through it. I woke him up, and I was still shaking so bad I couldn't really talk, but I was not going to pull over. I was terrified that this thing somehow followed us home. I took notice of where it had crossed. The next trip back to Joplin, I looked to see how deep the ditch was that it stood in when we locked eyes. The ditch was maybe 3 feet deep. Our truck was a little over 6 feet. Add the 3 feet, this creature thing was at least 8 to 9 feet tall. It looked down at me while I was in my truck. I had nightmares about this thing on and off. Its eyes were intelligent, but the violence conveyed towards me was so strong I actually felt like I felt what I felt at the time, intense hatred and anger with violent intent, like it somehow projected that upon me. I wrote what happened down in some notes on my phone. About 2 years after it happened, I needed some time to process. Saw a wolf or something like a wolf just south of Butler, Missouri 2 years ago. Very late night. No one else on the highway. The night was well lit and not cloudy. We were northbound. Something moving in a field on the southbound side of the interstate caught my eye. It was way out there. Whatever it was is extremely fast, and I realized it was running at an angle to the highway, and it would collide with our truck. It was moving so fast. I barely had time to realize it's heading straight towards us on purpose, so I sped up. This all happened within seconds. It's moving faster than we are, and I'm doing 75. Highway 49 north. I sped up to 85. It leapt across the southbound lanes like it was nothing and skittered haphazardly, barely in front of us. If I hadn't sped up, I think it would have landed in front of us far enough to cause us to wreck. Time seemed to stop. Like being in an accident or something, how time slows. It stopped in the ditch on our side of the road and stared straight into my eyes. I felt extreme danger. It looked pissed. It looked intelligent. I was afraid it would foul and jump into the bed of the truck. I sensed its hatred of us. Felt it wanted to hurt me. I floored it. Scared the shit out of me. I hate that area. I was still shaking after we got home. This thing was at least 8 feet tall, dark gray and black. It stood on its hind legs, enormous head, ran on all fours, but with a weird gait. Wolf-like, but like a wolf that was extremely distorted. It had unusually long front legs and almost finger-like long paws. Nothing human about it, but it was definitely intelligent, and I felt hunted. Like it had just tried to hunt us. I had nightmares for weeks straight, and still do from time to time after we travel through Butler on the interstate. I will never stop in that area. Nope. Don't know what it was. Never seen anything like it. It's not normal, though. I used to go hunting with my dad, looking up missing people for the area. It's off the charts compared to a large city like Springfield. That thing made me doubt what's actually out there. Yeah. So that was like her notes. These things have done that multiple times. The ambulance driver from Connecticut, or passenger, paramedic. He's in the passenger side. His partner was driving, and they saw Dogman. And he had just seen the one. But it was enough to mess him up. But he realized that his partner was messed up even more than he was. And for years, he waited. He was like, what did you see that I didn't? Come to find out, being that the driver has a junction area with cameras, and they feed through very quickly. They don't record. The only recording camera on an ambulance is in where the patient would be held. But there were 4 dogmen tactically trying to stop the ambulance, 1 in front to slow it down, 2 behind, and 1 coming up the side on the passenger side, which he couldn't see because he wasn't looking out his mirror. He was looking straight ahead. But the driver could look out both mirrors and use the camera to see. Dr. Nancy Shaw in Georgia. I am 100% a firm believer that she was hunted by dogmen and pulled out of her car. This was obviously a little while after Brenda Hamilton. The 77-year-old school teacher from Beaumont. But they find Nancy Shaw's car pulled over on one side of the road, her body on the other, her car still running, door wide open, her body torn apart. Another woman in Scotland, car stopped, Her body's found in a field a little ways away from her car. They blame it on, what they blame it on, fox? Fox and some other kind of small rodent-like animal. Badger. No, not badger. Maybe. I don't know. But just not feasible. So these things are tactically hunting humans. They're not cuddly mascots. They are definitely not. All right, let's get to the next video. So that video was out of Michigan. Some boaters enjoying a beautiful sunny day, coming up to an island, and they spot what appears to be a large bipedal creature. I find it very, very scary for my area because I live in the Adirondacks, as all of you or many of you know, and we have Lake George is a spit away, and Lake Champlain is like 20 minutes away. And in both of those lakes are just islands where any of these creatures could just swim to and live without being bothered by humans. So that video kind of resonates with me a little bit. On to today's final encounter. On this day, my buddy and I were set up in a clearing that butted up to a large tract of woodland in northern Illinois. This was one of our favorite spots to bang out a couple of coyote every now and then. Maybe 45 minutes before daylight would be gone, we heard the varmints howling in the north. My partner, Brian, had a call in hand and started to work what is known as a dying rabbit. The sound of the dying rabbit is irresistible to coyote. It never fails to bring him in. Brian is calling every 2 or 3 minutes with little time in the day, but we knew they were nearby. Our truck was parked a quarter of a mile from our position. We're in full camo, sitting against a clump of trees and bramble, about 40 yards into a field of grass, away from the main wood line. As Brian continues to make the call, we start to see a couple of heads pop up from the grass. A total of 4 coyote begin trotting toward what they suspect was a late afternoon snack heading directly toward us. The two of us raised our beads onto the position for a takedown when the unexpected happened. The coyotes hit the brakes, raised their heads, and out of the woods to our east, this huge creature came tearing out of the trees, heading right for them. The coyote immediately started to hightail to our west, running through the field and heading for cover of the trees. We could immediately tell that at least one of them wouldn't stand a chance escaping. This creature ran across the field in a forward lean, and it had to have been covering ground 3 times faster than the coyotes were. Just before the coyotes could make it to the wood line, the monster dove toward them. We heard a loud, cat-like squeal followed by silence. We sat in our position, stunned by the spectacle that was unfolding before our eyes. The creature arose to its feet with a coyote in hand. We could see it manipulating the dead creature while it stood in the field. This coyote, by the way, was 60 to 70 pounds, but in the hands of this creature, it looked like a rabbit. That's how big this creature's hands and arms were. We ducked down low as this creature turned and slowly walked back across the field in the direction it had come from, eventually disappearing into the timber. As you can imagine, this was an unbelievable sighting in any man's book. In hindsight, one of the most frightening aspects was that we had been sitting, making calls for about 3 hours before anything happened. We were now left wondering if we had actually been calling in this creature that happened to be closing in on our position when the coyote showed up. I guess we should thank God for sending those coyotes, because this creature had come out of the trees only 80 yards from where we sat, and it could have been on top of us before we'd even have time to react. This monster appeared to be moving as fast as a speeding 4x4 across the field. There's no way to really judge just how fast other than estimating 40 miles an hour. The coyotes were at a complete disadvantage in the tall grass and bramble, not to mention the fallen trees and patches of brush throughout the field that they had to navigate through and run. The creature, on the other hand, just took the straight line and sprinted clear across everything and anything in its path at the high speed. It was incredible to watch after the kill was made and the creature left. The 2 of us did not venture out of that field where the incident had occurred. We were quite happy to get out of there with our shirts still on our backs. The creature was everything that we had seen and heard about. It had to have been every bit of 8 feet or more and looked like a brick shithouse on legs when it ran across the field. When it had committed that dive for its prey, it launched itself like a basketball player like a baseball player stealing second base. We heard the brief yelp or screech sound as the coyote met its demise, and it was all over. After we made it back to the truck, the 2 of us were just talking about the dive for the kill and thought it actually made a lot of sense. We thought how the alternative options available to such a huge creature trying to reach in an effort to grab such a small, evasive creature. To us, it would be like you or I trying to catch a mouse with our hand while running around the house. It'd be virtually impossible. I think the same thing is true for them when hunting smaller game. They simply commit themselves on the fly to the dive, landing on the prey and dispatching it quickly. If this thing landed a body slam on anything, it would not be getting up anytime soon. We had to have been looking at a beast that weighed something like 1,500 pounds or more. When it went airborne, it was fully extended and had to have had some 16 feet long length in air. It looked like my duck hunting boat flying through the air. As it walked away with the coyote in its clutches, it held it like we would hold a bunch of bananas. And it was a 60 to 70 pound animal. It never turned to look in our direction, so we are unknown at the time. Its fur, or should I say hair, was long, shaggy looking. It was more reddish color than anything, but with a healthy mix of brown. At the distance, we watched it from its arms on this thing. Looked like sections of tree trunk hanging off its shoulders. If it was to get its hands on you or I, there would be no chance of escape. Bigfoot. Bigfoot experience. And it does make a lot of sense because you got to think, in 16 feet, so this thing had to have been 9 feet tall at least. Because they're talking with the arms stretched out while it dove in for the kill. Whew. Ha ha! Terrifying, my friends. Terrifying. And that was a dumb laugh. Let's jump into today's final video.
Star Emergency. This is Kyle speaking. How can I help you? Hello?
Something just ran in front of us on the road. We're in the ditch. We rolled over.
How many people are in the car, and is anyone injured?
There's 2 of us. I don't think we have any injuries.
Is the car on its top or wheels or what?
No, it's kind of sitting on its side.
Hold one moment, please, while I contact emergency services.
Okay.
Okay, the state police should be on their way in a few minutes. Is everyone still okay?
Yeah, I think we're okay.
What ran in front of you? A deer?
I don't know what the hell it was, but it was big. It looked like a great big dog. Standing up.
Was it a bear, maybe?
Maybe. Oh my God. Oh my God!
Sir? Hello? Are you still there? Sir?
And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.